Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be listening to our little cast. Ronald Wilsher here. We've got back Mr. Russ Johns for another episode. We had so much fun, Russ. I think it's like old home week. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much. The last conversation we had was incredibly beneficial to me because it's been a while since I had an opportunity to talk with you and chat with you. So catching up is wonderful, and adding value to the community is also an opportunity to actually do what we love. Because
Amen, brother.
I know it's all something that we enjoy. So let's
Well,
do this.
I was, born. There was people born to do certain things. I think I was born to talk. So putting a mic in front of my mouth is like giving Jack Daniels to an alcoholic. So,
Well,
but
let's take advantage of another 51-minute episode.
that last one, I can't believe it was 51 minutes. But no, it was very cool because I think, one of the things that I love about this, and I'm sure I don't know if it affects you the same way, but, anything I ever say about my business, trying to help people, it helps me too. I'm talking to me too.
Yeah.
So, tell people real quick, what we're going to talk about. You do show people how to set up podcasts. Since I've started mine, I've had a lot of people ask me that. So we're going to talk about that in this podcast, why you should start a podcast, why it's easier than you think. But give people MrRussJohns.com a little bit of your background real quick, 30 seconds or so. How'd you get here? What's going on with you?
Well, I got here through an invitation of Ronald Wilsher. He
You
sent
must
me
be
a link.
cool.
I showed up. There was a party.
He doesn't invite too many people, so you must be cool.
Yeah. Well, I grew up as a musician. I grew up in the technology space with radio, television, and broadcasting. So it's a natural evolution for me to start live streaming and podcasting. And I used to teach this in Texas when I was there. Is that Future Media Association, and the idea that you are the media now. With you can pick up a phone, you can start a podcast, you can start a live stream, you can start doing video and content creation, and you can actually start conversations by utilizing these tools. And that's really what it's about: is adding value, building authority, increasing your visibility, and allowing people to understand how you can help them in their journey as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about that last podcast. We were kind of ahead of our time. We were in a real radio station. We thought we were happening, didn't we?
Oh, we were happening. What are you talking about?
uh,
Yeah.
well, I think back on those times, and it's I had a lot of fun, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to reconnect with you and see what you're doing, because I know you're in this space now that you have a lot of good value you can add to whoever wants to listen to this. I started this podcast, Russ. I think we talked about this last time, because I don't really follow any rules on anything I ever do. But I wanted to start a podcast. Number one, it'd give me an opportunity to talk, something I like to do, but also an opportunity not only to talk, but to talk to cool people like you, just to kind of give your story and what got you here. And, you mentioned on the last episode about you falling and you fell off of a billboard or something. What was that?
Yeah, I was in 1987. I was in Portland, Oregon, and I was working for an outdoor company and AK Media, and I was up on a sign, and through circumstance, fate, or whatever you want to call it, I fell 3 stories. And fortunately, there was a kid watching me across the street, and him and his mother they were at a bus stop, and he just happened to be watching me, and he goes, "Hey, Mom, that guy just jumped off the sign." So fortunately, they called the ambulance and hauled me off, and it was a start of a 2-year recovery process and research and surgeries and recovery and just taking time to recover and get back to life. And it was a process. It was a challenging time. And so that got me involved in safety and technology and everything and I was already in advertising and in business. So when I got involved in the radio stations and the television stations and being able to create things like that, it was really nice to be able to help more people as my mission goes.
I
And
love that saying, by the way.
yeah, it's simple, it's clean, it fits your trend as well. You know, it's just like, keep it simple, keep it super simple. What do you call it? Kindergarten
Clear.
kindergarten clear,
Yeah.
and which I love as well. And,
Well,
and so that was the start. And you know, I've been doing technology, helping people learn technology, podcasting, live streaming, broadcasting, all of these things, and I love it, and I want to help more people.
that's what we're going to talk about on this episode. I kind of want to be focused on if people want to start a podcast, we're going to let you, since you're the authority on this, kind of take us through the steps of I'm going to pretend like I don't know what the hell I'm doing, which I actually don't have to pretend that because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But pretend like I'm the newbie, and you're just going to kind of walk us through what it would take. First of all, what a podcast is, and why would I, let's say I'm a real estate agent, I'm a doctor, I'm an attorney, I'm whoever. Why would I want a podcast? And if I did, what would be some of the initial steps that I would take to become a star like you, Russ Johns?
We're all stars in the universe. Thanks for that, Ronnie. And I really, first and foremost, I want to remind people that there are 4 elements of creating awareness and visibility in the market. There's words, images, audio, and video. And you have to decide what personality fits your ideal method of creation. Because some people are writers. You know, blog posting is still a deal. Email, you know, creating your email list and getting people on your list, or text messaging is great. You know, Twitter taught us that 140 characters was really an effective way to get kindergarten clear on your message and make sure that it happens as effectively as possible. So that is one piece of the equation. Images like Instagram, you know, is really a lesson in how you can actually, you know, take your phone and take a picture and put it out there. Audio is podcasting, and, you know, there's like, you know, Lunch Club, or there's different audio platforms. Now Twitter has Twitter streams, or it's not streams.
Spaces.
Yeah, spaces. And so, you know, that's another opportunity for you to gain attention and build some visibility in the market. And then video, just like what we're doing here. If you're watching this on Spotify, this is a video podcast, which you can live stream. You can capture this. You can use it on YouTube. You can use it on other platforms. And the essence is do what you enjoy to start out with. Because if you're forcing it and you're doing something that is counter to what your personality is, it's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be work. It's going to feel like a chore. It's going to feel like friction. So remove the friction, decide what platform you want to put on. And what that does is allows people to decide, okay, if I like to talk and I'm okay with the microphone and I don't mind sharing some opinions, audio is a great place to start. You know, we're in the infancy still of podcasting, and it says like everybody's starting a podcast. Well, not really, because a lot of people start a podcast and there are fewer people actually continuing to create podcasts.
I was reading somewhere the other day that most people never get past 18 or 20. And I thought back to us. That's about where we cut off, somewhere in there, maybe a few more. But no, it's I think you make a really good point. Is I have in my book, it says forced action can never be sustained. So if you're doing something that is creating friction, that's kind of against what you do, you're never going to stick with it long enough to get good at it, to get people to pay you for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the first and foremost is understand it's a long game. It's not a quick win. It's not a way to sell and pitch your stuff. It's a relationship building tool that opens doors that you would never possibly have in any other platform that you can imagine.
Start that conversation.
Start that conversation. I've had, with the pirate broadcast, I used to do a daily show, 5 days a week, every single day. And sometimes, Ronnie, I would be booked out 2 months in advance, and people wanting to get on the show. And so, strangers, billionaires, millionaires, business people, yoga instructors, anybody that could actually share their message, share their appearance without having to create their own show. And that's what's important to understand is once you create a show, you will attract and engage, just like your statement, attract and engage is better than chase and convince. So rather than trying to get their attention, what you're doing is attracting their attention. So people that are in alignment with your views, your authority, your subject matter, they're going to be wanting to get on your show and have a conversation just like we're having today.
Well, I'll give you a story about that explains exactly what you're talking about, Russ. Is I office with a guy named Mark Zachary, nextstephomeloans.com. I'll give him a plug. If you need money, he has I tell people he not only has a money tree, he has an orchard. But no, he's a mortgage guy. And, it's funny. We started a podcast about 6 or 8 months ago, maybe a year ago. We were sitting down. You'll love this, Russ. And we were talking, and I'm like, Mark, we should record this, right? We say a lot of good stuff. And that's kind of how the first podcast that we started, Inside Houston Real Estate, I think we're on 30 something episodes. But what he did is he started his own podcast interviewing, because, the lifeblood of his business is real estate agents. So he started interviewing very successful real estate agents. And exactly what you said, Russ, happened. He started having these people call him. I mean, he's booked for a month or 2 months out of people that want to be on his podcast. So what you're saying is absolutely true. And once you get out of that, can you see this?
Yeah.
The attract and engage, you get out of this chase and convince mode and get into the attract and engage mode. It's a whole different life, because now you have the power.
Yeah. And it's the least expensive form of advertisement that I can imagine. Social media is great and everything. However, it's churn, it's a constant battle. You always have to be there. However, if you get a show and you enjoy having a conversation about a topic that you love and appreciate, you'll attract the individuals that you need to talk to. And there's so many people out there that are willing to have a conversation with you that it's really important to understand. Okay, there's some challenges with it. There's some technology involved. However, it's not that difficult. In fact, going back to when we first started our first podcast years ago, almost a decade now, is the idea that I was actually using the same technology I use for podcasting as I was using for live streaming high school varsity sports over AM radio. And that's how I got into podcasting, is I was live streaming these games over AM radio, and I was managing those stations down in Missouri City. And the reality is the technology has continued to evolve and improve, and we have the opportunity right now to actually talk to anyone in the world about a subject that we love and enjoy, and ask them their opinions and learn from other people.
Well, and what you do, Russ, and for people like, why would I want a podcast, or why would I want to be on one? What you do is you delve into the tribe of those other people and get your word out, and you never know what's going to happen with that. Because, I mean, I always bring up Joe Rogan. I never even watched him, and I still really don't watch him, but I do watch some of the shorts that he does on YouTube. But you think about 4 or 5 years ago, he sold his podcast to Spotify for, I read it was somewhere it was 100 million. Then I read it was 200 million. So who knows? It was a lot of money. Okay. Almost as much as you make in a year, Russ. But anyway, if you stop and think about it, what exactly did he sell? Was it a lot of real estate and buildings? Was it equipment? Was it, a lot of ranch land with a lot of cattle on it. What was it?
No,
What was it? What did he sell?
he sold conversations,
Well, he sold eyeballs. He sold the attention.
attention.
And so I put it in my second book, which I had this guy, have to give him a plug. His name is Dr. Jeffrey. He read my first one. He said, Ronnie, your second edition, it's not slightly, it is a deranged mind. So I put a little red mark through there. And so now he's a genius because I think about him every time I see that. So Dr. Jeff, you'll have to come on and talk to me. Anyway, so if you think about it, is in the creator economy, attention is more valuable than talent. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, if you are good, I don't think that hurts you, right?
Well,
But this new economy, and you just talked about it, there's no capital barrier anymore. Me and you can sit here and talk. You're in West Texas somewhere, right?
yeah, all the way in
That's West
Arizona.
Texas, right?
Yeah, Arizona's West Texas, right?
Somewhere out the west. Anyway, we can sit here and talk, and what we're doing 15, 20 years ago there would have been a capital barrier. We couldn't have afforded it.
Yeah.
We'd have had big trucks with big antennas outside, and
When I was in radio, I mean, it took engineers and transport and circuits and everything else. It took a lot of planning and effort to get a remote broadcast in place.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, because I think about like the football games, and they would show all the trucks outside, and now we literally can do it over. So really, you don't have an excuse to get your message out. If you've got a message, and I think everybody does, well, not everybody, but most people, right? You got a message, there's a way to do it. So first of all, we want to talk about, if I'm coming to you, Russ, and I don't really know other than I like to talk, what would be the first thing you would tell me to how to start a podcast?
Well, I actually created a great solution for this, and it's called, there's a website called podcastyourbrand.com, and I give away a free 5-day mini course or 6-day mini course on all the steps needed for that process.
I forgot, sorry to interrupt you. I forgot to put our little banner on there. If you can see, go and sign up to his email newsletter. Russ Johns, captain at thepiratesyndicate.com. It's right there on the little thing going across. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And so the reality is that it's a very simple process. And like I mentioned, I'm using the same exact platform I was using a decade ago, and it's called Spreaker, Speaker. And it has this cool app. It has this cool app called Studio, where you can actually record and broadcast from your phone live to the podcast app. And you could go live on it. You can record it and post it. You can schedule it and everything else. And there's lots of different solutions. But I stay with that connection. I stay with that solution because the reality is I want it kindergarten clear on what is taking place.
You can borrow that. I'm sure I borrowed it from somebody.
Yeah. And so the reality is that we have an opportunity to share our message, share our voice. And like we were talking in last episode, the last time we talked, is there's somebody that's further behind. It's like, imagine where you were 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Somebody in that place that has an idea and an ambition that says, I want to go where Ronnie's going. I want to do what Ronnie's doing. And I want to be able to have a conversation online like this. And so all you have to do is share that information, share that value, continue the conversation, and attract and engage rather than chase and convince.
And I think, Russ, and I think we mentioned this the last episode, the last time we talked, is I think one of the things we do as humans is we take for granted what we know, and we assume just because we know it, everybody knows it. And I think that's a huge mistake, because if we're talking and you're telling me something that I don't know, I'm probably not going to tell you, well, hang on a second, I don't know anything about this. Generally, what do most people do? They either remain silent or shake their head. They don't like to admit they don't know. So, I preface a lot of things with, as you know, as you probably know. Well, it's okay not to know. You
Yeah.
know, just if you don't know, go find somebody that knows, right? And
The information is free.
right. Well, and I have in my book it says um, ignorance is still an option, but it's no longer a valid excuse. Okay. So you can play dumb, but that's not a real good excuse because there's something called the YouTube and the Google and the DuckDuckGo where you have at your fingertips the knowledge to do anything you want.
Yeah.
And also you have the ability because there's no longer a capital barrier to talk to people like you, Russ, that have done it that
Yeah.
can, and I tell people, enhance your learning curve by leveraging the experience of others. So I don't have to make the mistakes that you made if I go to you. That can leverage my learning curve. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And another thing that I think is important to understand is experiments become experience. And if you go out and you put yourself out there, and that's one of the first roadblocks people run into when they talk about video or podcasting is I don't like the way my voice sounds. I don't like the way I look on camera. I don't like this. Or I don't like that. It's uncomfortable. Well, learning is accomplished beyond the edge of fear. And, every musician starts at zero. They start at the very first note, and it takes practice. And like we were talking, I think offline is Mr. B said, do the first 500 episodes before you start complaining about it.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Beast, for those of y'all don't know, y'all, there's this little site online called YouTube. I don't know if y'all have heard of it.
Yeah.
But there's this guy on there. He's in his late 20s, early 30s. I don't know. He's a pretty young guy.
Yeah.
And he's called Mr. Beast, but he has 220 million subscribers on all his YouTube channels. And he basically says, make 100 videos and improve every single time. And once you do that, by the end of your 100th video, you'll be good. He said, my first 500 videos weren't worth watching. So I think what we do, Russ, this brings up another really great thing or something to remind people of, because I know I've been guilty of it, is we look at successful people and always see as success. We don't see the hell that most of them went through to get there. We just think they've always been good. So a little thing that, before I started this podcast, because my first two, man, I'm telling you, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Just turn it on and we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
But there was this guy, if you go back and look at any YouTube channel, you may have done this. Man, what they're doing now, especially if they're any good at it, if you go back and look at the early ones, most of them sucked, but they kept doing it and improved. And pretty soon, wow, he's an expert. He's the authority, but not in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I have over 1,000 videos on YouTube, and it's amazing to think about the arc of the journey. And you're absolutely correct. You don't have to know everything. And that's the beauty of, the last couple of years. That's the upside from the last couple of years is everybody's used to Zoom. They're used to communicating on video. They're used to having remote communications, and all of a sudden it opens the doors and the floodgates of the creator economy, the solopreneur, and the idea that we can sell and share information and create value out of that information. Because like you said, learn from somebody that has already had that experience. And that's why we have coaches. That's why we have people that can help us and move us forward and say, I have a block here, so I want to make sure that I'm making progress. Who do I need to go to in order to learn this?
Well, I was talking to somebody the other day. It's a different way of learning because used to, we got sold this bill of goods is you're born, you start going to school, and they teach you this skill, and then you go sell that skill to an employer, and he takes the money, most of it, and gives you a little bit, just enough to make you stay, right?
Yeah.
Well, now, because of the creator economy, there are no middlemen. All the gatekeepers have been removed, right? I can get anybody on my podcast that I have enough courage to ask, and that'll come on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can see myself, and I'm crazy. I know, Russ, you already know this, but my goal is to be the first person in podcast history to have 1 billion listeners at one time. And I've just always liked that billion thing.
Yeah.
think about it. What if I'm 90% unsuccessful? That's still 100 million, right? If I'm doing the math right. So what you have to understand is no matter what you do, some people are going to like it, some people aren't going to like it. So just go out there and do your thing, and you start attracting the right people.
Like my mission, help more people, help more people. And that's why I love seeing someone go from having no ability to communicate to having a podcast or a live stream or a blog post or a website or something like that. Because think of it this way: if you help 1,000 people, help 1,000 people, that's 1 billion people.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's compound interest. And the thing that you have to get to is attracting the right people in your community. And you do that by putting out something that will allow people to see you, know, like, and trust.
Something
and
of value.
Trust you and add value and continue to add value and not ask for anything in return in advance. And that's, to me, the new economy. That's not the, 20, 30 years ago when it's, hey, we got to close. Always be closing. It's always add value and make sure that you're attracting the right individual. Like, you don't want to work with people that are not ideal or not cool people. You want to be able to work with people that you appreciate working with, and they're not going to be causing hassles and, causing pressure and everything else. Because you don't have to do that any longer.
Non-cool people are not allowed in my world, and I wish I had have come to that realization way before now. But it's really true. I think one of the big mistakes that I know I've made it in the past, we try to be all things to all people, right? And no matter what you do, that's impossible, right?
Yeah.
And so you think about it, you have 100 people say something good about you, and then one person says something negative, and what do? You think about the person that said something negative, It's like, don't do that, right? I go into the doctor. I said, Doc, when I do this right here, for those of y'all that are listening on the podcast, I'm like hitting my wrist and bending it. But I say, doctor, this hurts when I do it. And you know what the doctor says? Don't do that anymore. Stop. Oh, that'll be $450, please. So here's the thing, Russ, and I think we're going to keep going through this process here, but I think that the deal is, you've got to I have the January 1 in my book, the most important battle you'll ever win is the battle for your own mind. You have a story, you have intellectual capital that's valuable. And because of the technology now, the gatekeepers have been removed and the capital barriers have been removed. You can monetize that intellectual capital. You can leverage all that skill set and have people pay you for it, and you never have to leave the farm, right?
Exactly.
And so what I want you to explain now, so let's say, how do I identify, how do I identify what's that first step that you're going to take me through to start a podcast?
Well, there's the first step that you have to decide is, okay, what am I going to talk about? What is the subject who am I talking to? What am I talking about? And think about a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, because it's not going to necessarily stay static. However, you have to have a concept of because it's like the workflow. You have workflow and you have systems. So part of the workflow is identifying, just like you're building your brand, like, RussJohns.com, Pirate Syndicate, pick a solution, look around, see if it's available, make sure that nobody else has bought it, and make sure that nobody else owns it, and kind of get a concept about what it is, who you want to talk to, and then decide, am I going to be a talking head? Am I going to share my visions and my ideals and just be a solo? Is it going to be guest and host? Is it going to be panel discussions? Is it going to be, what kind of style what do I want to build into this long term? Because
all the above, right?
Or all of the above. And each one comes with a different set of challenges. So it's cause and effect. So once you decide that, then you have to build a system around, okay, how do I get guests on to the show? Well, booking guests onto the show, you build a system for that. And I've helped thousands of people do this. So you start that system, you create a booking system for your show, and you say, okay, pick a time that works for your schedule. And then you have to decide, okay, well, what am I going to do to qualify these individuals to make sure that they can talk and walk and carry on a conversation? So either you have to do research or you have to interview them. So you go through and you interview individuals, or you research the topic that you're speaking on, and building this momentum out. And once you get a few of these things in place, then they become muscle memory. And then you want to start expanding your message. And then you want to be able to, for growth, the thing that you want to think about is, how can I expand my message to other people that are already listening to like messages? So you go on other podcasts, you find out what they're saying and who's in their audience. And then you can actually, work some, probably some partnerships and saying, hey, if you mention me on your show, I'll mention you on your show. And because on social media, it's not as effective for podcast growth, because you're not going to take somebody off of one platform and push them to another platform without the disconnect. There's, it's like, okay, I'm driving to Texas. Oh, now I'm going to go to North Dakota. And it's like, no, you want to catch people as they're listening to the podcast to actually become aware of your podcast. So that's another growth strategy you have to think about. All of these little pieces of the puzzle on their own are not too complicated. However, when they all come together and you're thinking about how you can do some things to start your podcast, build your audience, and grow is all part of the process. And that takes time. It takes a little bit of effort. And that's what I coach people on all the time is here's some things. Okay, next do this. Okay, now that you've got that in place, you understand that process. Next do this. And then you just continue. But get, 10, 20 episodes out there, see how you like it before you push it out too far. Because you get there and say, this isn't really what I want to do with my time.
And that's okay too.
That's okay too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I always tell people, and I think we talked about this a little on the last episode. I thought I turned this off, guys. Sorry about that. Is, in the, I always say kindergarten clear. So the first thing you've got to do, I'm sitting here looking at russjohns.com. Okay. For me, live streaming, podcast strategy, everything. To me, I always tell people register your name, and then you can build off of that platform. Whereas if you go out and try to do some kind of brand first, you may, like I say, you may think, hey, I don't even like this. But if you've registered your name and you build your platform off of your name, it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, I have ronaldwilsher.com, but I also have wilshermedia.com. I have all my domains for my publishing company. I have all my domains for Branding for Humans, for New Home Rockstar, for $1 Million Speech, all the classes I teach. So once you brand yourself and have that platform, you can go any direction you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
ronaldwilsherpodcast.com. That's my podcast. Let's say I decided not to do a podcast anymore. I still have ronaldwilsher.com. So brand yourself first, and then you can build off of that platform. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I looking at that right?
Well, not only that is, let's take, for example, here's a perfect example, is the Pirate Syndicate. The Pirate Syndicate was an extension of the Pirate Broadcast, which I was broadcasting under Russ Johns. So when you go to Russ Johns, you see all the previous episodes, and you got a bunch of interviews there. And then I thought, well, I would really love to help live streamers and producers increase their business. So I want to create a Pirate Syndicate. I want to create a community of producers in order to produce shows for marketing and media companies. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to put this on pause. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to take some time. And after 600 episodes, I was kind of burnt out, and so I took and put it on pause. And then I recently took a a long hiatus, traveled around the countryside for a while, and the epiphany came to me is that the Pirate Syndicate is more about helping solopreneurs and creators build their systems, their workflows, and their content creation process in order to build their authority and build their brand, just like you're talking about.
But Russ, it's all based around their personality. What do you like to do? Right? What are
Exactly.
you good at? And so
Yeah.
if you build that platform off of russjohns.com, you can be Mr. Branson and have 450 companies, right? But he's the head of that brand.
Yeah, I'm still the figurehead. Russ Johns is still my brand. And if I want to include other people in the Pirate Syndicate and I want to maybe sell it one day as a newsletter, I can sell that as an entity. I don't have to.
You can keep russjohns.com.
I can keep my name.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned, do you remember the podcast Answer Man? Do you ever remember that guy?
Yeah.
Well, his name is Cliff Ravenscraft. And the reason I know this story is he's one of many that I've read about over the last 5 to 10 years. They rebrand themselves, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was the podcast Answer Man way back in the day. And he's like, man, I do so many other things than podcast, right? That's just part of what I do. So he rebranded himself as cliffravenscraft.com. Well, there was another dude that was the same way. It was the what's the online platform for blogs? WordPress guy or something. And he's like, man, I do more than WordPress. So he rebranded himself as his name. He still does that. But I think you make a good point that I've really never thought that much about is once you brand you as the star, right? And you have all these different companies, you could sell those off and you still have you, right? So I think
Dave Chappelle, when he did his comedy show and he walked away from a bunch of,
50 million.
A lot of money. And he just checked out of the system. They own the rights to Dave Chappelle. So
not good.
It's not good. And so you have to think about, how can I build my authority as an individual, russjohns.com, and how can I also build a asset, the list, and also help more people, and that's the Pirate Syndicate.
Right. But I do it a different way, but it's still the same platform, ronaldwilsher.com. So it's so important, number one, and I tell people, start your list, man. Get your list going, right? You'll need list. Did I tell you? You need list.com. I registered. You'll need list. It starts with that list, and it starts with reconnecting with everybody you know. And once you do that, now you've got people that, you've created some, you can correct something, you can't correct nothing. Right. And it's why I'm doing these podcasts is I'm telling you, when I say I don't know what the hell I'm doing, that's mostly true. I knew enough to download StreamYard and hook up my mic, which I had to ask some guy how to do that because I'd forgotten from when we did it, Russ, back 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was. But the whole thing, I think you made a good point, is once you have that base and what you can help, what is your expertise? I always say, what would you do? The something that you do right now that you love so much that time gets away from you, and you do it even for free if you could find a way to pay your bills. Whatever that is, that's probably what you should be talking about.
Does that make sense? What I'm doing.
No. I'm for you. You figured this out, but I'm talking for other people that are listening when they're trying to decide what is it. Because, Catherine, the amazing skinny blonde number 2, she like, Ronnie, why would people want to hear me talk? Reminds me of Fred Warner. Who in the hell wants to hear actors talk, right?
Yeah.
But what she realized after she did her first public speaking event is she told her story. Ronnie, what am I going to talk about? Go tell your story. And so after it's over with, people went up to her and said, I didn't know that about you. That is a very inspiring story.
Yeah.
Hey, would you come talk to us? Would you come talk to my group? And she's like, whoa. So it went from being about her to helping and adding value to other people. And so that's another thing. And I know you agree with this, Russ. Another thing that I teach people is public speaking, whether it's to one person or 1,000 or more, it allows you to leverage, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's all about just developing the courage to be who you are. So let's go back a minute. And so you've figured out what you want to talk about. Then what goes next? I mean, about equipment, about software. Run us through that real quick. Is there any special needs or?
Well, I personally love the platform that you're on, and I've been a remote producer for StreamYard for years. Uh, start StreamYard is extremely easy.
That's why I
And
use it.
yeah, StreamYard is built on the foundation of keeping it super simple. And the reality is you can fire up an account for free, just get started, practice, and just put some things out there. Just record it just for yourself, and kind of put some things in place. Like I've got the backdrop here. You put your name in place. Learn the platform, and just start practicing. Phone a friend. Make sure that you record a couple of things just to feel comfortable, and then go through that process a few times to make sure that you're confident that you can actually fire it up, hit record, process the information, and then in StreamYard, you can actually download that audio file, and then you could put it. What I recommend is you can actually upload it to your podcast host. Now, like I mentioned before and previously, and I'll always continue to mention it, is I like Spreaker, just because I grew up in Spreaker and it's earned me a lot of money over the years by podcasting and sharing my message about podcasting. And so you can upload it to that, and then you can schedule it. You could put in the details, and you can actually add it to multiple platforms like, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Castbox, all of these different platforms and distribution, because you want to get distribution out. But I recommend that you record 3 to 5 episodes initially to make sure that you have those in place. And if people want to binge listen and they want to capture they want to hear more, you have enough episodes in there to actually do that. And then the next thing I recommend you do, once you are ready to launch and you're putting it out there, and you say, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to commit to it, get a number of people to actually listen to it, comment on it, and share their feedback on reviews, because getting reviews will give you a little boost in a little activity there. If you're just doing it for the branding and authority, and you're building it up slowly, it's not as important. It's not as much of a big deal as chasing the numbers and we want to be on the top of the stack. But make sure that you get that process in place. Invite people, just like your email list. Invite people to get on your list, just like your text message. Invite people to get on your text messages. Verify that they're going to do it, and then just continue to grow and evolve and practice every single month. It could be that simple. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Well, and I think one of the things that people do, Seneca, one of my great favorite quotes from him, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And I think a lot of times we spend our time solving problems that don't need to be solved,
Yeah.
And so I tell people, well, first of all, if you want, I use StreamYard because it's simple. And you can tell if I'm doing a podcast, it ain't that hard. Okay. If I'm doing it, so ronaldwilsher.com/StreamYard. That's my affiliate link. You'll get some free time if you decide to use it. But like Russ said, you can sign up for the free account. It doesn't cost you anything. And that's one of the reasons I did it, because Russ, I think we talked on the last episode, I'm not following any rules really. I just wanted to get a place where I could talk to cool people like you and learn from them, and then in the process, I'll share you with all my contacts, email lists, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And it's the main thing is just do it. And once you get going, action creates energy, right? Action creates energy. So the more you get going, it's kind of like, it's funny. Did I ever tell you about how I started and came up with my book? Did I ever tell you that story? It's pretty
Maybe.
funny.
Tell it again.
Well, it's, I used to change my voicemail because I tell people, and I teach this in my public speaking class. And you'll probably have noticed with these episodes me and you do, Russ, I talk a lot in sound bites, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want people to listen to you, I've learn how to talk in sound bites, little short pieces of information. And so I used to change my voicemail every day, and I would put some little saying on there. And people were always, they would call, and this was back before robocalls, right? When we actually answered our phone. And people say, "Oh no, Ronnie, don't answer your phone. I've got 10 people here in the office. We want to see what's on your voicemail today." And I'm like, man, there's got to be some money in this somewhere. So basically what I did is I came up with a book that has one for every day of the year, right? I'm on my second edition already. And so here's the reason I told you that story. I told you, man, the reason I told you. That's how this book started. And so what I'm going to do with your suggestion, Russ, is I'm going to read my book into a podcast. It's called what, a solo cast, I think they call it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read all my miscellaneous ramblings. I've also got a book called My Hooker Book. Sell Like a Hooker, Sleep Like a Baby. I'm going to read that into a solo cast. Another thing, and this is just to give you ideas, I've got a ton of really good feedback. All the bad feedback I like delete. But I've got a ton of really good feedback from all my CE classes that I've done. I mean, like several hundred little testimonials. And I'm just going to read that into a podcast, right? Just
I have, and you also have the authority to take those little sayings and add them to the project broadcast and insert them with a link to your podcast reviews. So every day you could actually create one in a campaign. And then when people opt in to learn more or be inspired daily or whatever you want to call it, your miscellaneous ramblings, you can actually send that text message out every single day.
Well, and I get yours and I love it. So that brings it up before I forget. How do people get on your list if they want to get on your project broadcast list, your texting list, and or your email list?
Go to thekindnesscrew.live.
Thekindnesscrew.live to get on your list.
Uh-huh.
And then if they want to get on your texting list, how do they do that?
That is the texting list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the whole goal of this, as we talked about last time, is to start more conversations. Whatever you've got to do to take your personality, which is your competitive advantage in the content war, right?
Yeah.
Take your personality and use it to attract people, right? And when you develop the courage to be who you are, you start attracting the very people that you want to do business with or that you want talking about you. Now, this brings up another thing that I always talk about or try to. I think one of the big mistakes people make in business is they try to make everybody they meet a customer. And I think it's a huge mistake because I've got a lot of people on my Way Cool Friends list that have never bought anything from me that send me people.
Yeah.
Ronnie, I met somebody today. They really need you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll let you know how it goes. So don't try to turn everybody you meet into a customer. If they're cool, just get them on your list, right? And start that conversation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. And I learned this from you way back when we were doing the Main Street Chamber, where you would ask people, you would interview people in a networking event, but you would never say what you did. You never say what you sold. You never said anything about anything you shared. It's like,
well, think about this, Russ, and this is a good segue here. Think about it. If you don't like former long-haired, loudmouth hippies, does it really matter what I do for a living?
No.
Now, if you do like them or it doesn't matter, does it really matter what I do for a living?
No,
I call it the
but that's the beauty of it. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, if you don't, 10 people can provide the same service. If you like working with my personality, me individual, my way of thinking, my way of communicating, my vibe, whatever you want to call it,
they're going to come to you.
Yeah.
Right. And so I say this a lot in my CE classes that I teach for realtors, for new home builders, is if I don't like you, does it really matter what logo's on your card? No. If I like you, does it really matter what logo's on your card? No, you don't even have to have a damn card, right? But we're so drilled in the head by sales trainers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, if you don't have that logo on your card and you don't have that, nobody's going to talk to you. That's not right. That's not true, right? I call it the likability factor. I think I just mentioned that. What is your likability factor? If it's really high, that's probably good for your business. If it's pretty low, then probably not good.
Yeah. And if people call you back or answer your calls,
that's a good sign.
That might be an indication, right?
If the phone doesn't ring, it's me, right? No, it's funny. I'll tell you a real quick story because we're back up on already 51 minutes, and I appreciate you, Russ, coming on. This has been a lot of fun. But I did this talk one time with Catherine, and it was probably 10, 15 minutes, and this guy came up to me, and he said, man, I want to talk to you. I'm like, okay, but you can't do it now because I'm about to head north. And so he gave me his card. I gave him my card. And that afternoon, I had put his number in my phone. He called. Well, I didn't answer him. Well, the next day, he calls me again. And so I called up Catherine, and I said, I should probably present this gentleman with an opportunity to give me some money. And so I called him up, and he brought one of my several $1,000 packages that I sell. And after he's counting me out all these $100 bills, there's a pretty big stack. I asked him, I said, why did you hire me? He goes, well, he said, when I met you last week, he said, I went home and told my wife, he said, honey, I met somebody this morning. He said, I don't know what he's selling, but whatever it is, I'm going to buy it. Do you know Russ, he's still a customer to this day, and he renews every year, and that's been like 7 years ago. Isn't that crazy?
That is brilliant.
Concentrate on the lockability factor. Your technical skills, hire somebody that genius like Russ to do that. Get your people skills. That's what's attractive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so I'll tell you what, I've enjoyed this again. Tell people again how they can get a hold of you if they want to acquire any of your intellectual capital.
Get on my list, and that is at thepiratesyndicate.com. Get on the mailing list, respond, send me a message. If you want to book a time to have a call, go to russjohns.com, russjohns.com. And you could book Russ. There's a big blue button up there. If you want to get closer, bookruss.com.
It's actually red, Russ. I'm looking at it, but
the
button, okay. I like it.
Yeah.
Red's my favorite color.
It takes you right to the booking page, doesn't it?
Genius. I'm telling you, genius.
Remove the friction, Ronald.
Make it easy.
Kindergarten clear.
Well, listen, I enjoyed Mr. Russ Johns. It's been like I say, these last two episodes have seemed like old home week.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we got to talk, and we'll have to definitely in the future when I figure out what I'm doing, bring you back on. But I appreciate you coming. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, RonaldWilsher.com, 281-395-1000. Start a conversation. See what happens. You never know, right? So I appreciate it, brother, and we'll have to do it again. Thanks for coming on.
Take care. Appreciate you.
You too, brother. Bye-bye.